You know, just like many, many things in life that you think is over, and then it just comes cropping all back to you, eh? No? Nothing? Um, Listen, before I start this one, I should probably answer a few questions, shall I? Let's see. Here we are. Elfie Lover 9827. Seriously, what the fuck is up with these bloody names? Does no one ever call themselves by name these days? I mean, come on. Anyway, he or she asks, I really can't tell. How do you feel now knowing what a Scarver is and what they became? Well, obviously, if you were listening to the last one, not exactly the most pleased about it, was I? But it's just one of those things that I realise that I have no control over it, and, well, that's just, the way things have to be, unfortunately. It's not my fault, that the Scarvers de-evolved into basically savage beasties, eh? But it doesn't mean I have to be one. And I know, I get some of the instincts that they have and that, and... look, the thing is, although I do share my DNA with them, I also share my DNA with humans as well. So, but even then, not all humans are exactly the same. You're not defined by your DNA or your species. That does not define who you are. Like, for example, are we all, Adolf Hitlers or, radicalists and that? No, absolutely not. But, it's just people like to group things into a nice group because it's easier. Like saying that, I don't know, all cats and dogs and whatever are all exactly the same as each other because it's just easier to group things like that rather than, having to actually look at individuals. Because that's the thing, isn't it? We're not treated as, say, individuals these days. We're just treated as, a group of people. You have to belong to some sort of group of people that defines you. You can no longer be an individual in your own right. You have to be part of something else and that, and you're just, a tiny pawn in a massive ocean, eh? Oh, yes. No more individuality. No. The only way you can present some form of individuality if you had fame and fortune. But even then, you still get grouped into the top 1% lot or the famous or the wealthy lot and that somehow defines who you are. You can try your absolute best, do whatever it takes. Though the thing is, if you do something radical and that to, break off from the norm and that, you just are to become part of another norm. For example, I don't know, if you were rich and that and you decided to become, I don't know, a thief, then you're just branded as a thief. Then it's no longer the fact that you're rich and that you're branded under, you're just branded under something else. And so on, and the way things continue on and on and on and on. But anyway, regardless, I should probably answer this question, shouldn't I? Well, I just have to accept it in that, and I mean, is it one of those things that when you know, you'd rather not know? Although, then again, I am glad at least to know. It's hard. I mean, would I, have my memory wiped? Would I rather have my memory wiped of this whole experience and I'm finding out? But, again, no. It's always better to know rather than to not know. Because at least then you're not questioning yourself, you're not worrying about things anymore, you have a definitive answer to everything. Yes, I think that's what I'm going to go with. But hey, anyway, you know what? Let's just dive into this one and sat comfortably because, or standing or walking or whatever the hell you are doing at this precise time that you are listening to this podcast. Because believe me, there's a lot to tell with this one, I assure you. So again, the day started like any other. Or would it? Well, actually, no. This time, we were actually going to be told something. Yes, it was felt that since, the way I reacted to the scarf around the accent, maybe they felt that this would calm me down and somewhat, but they were actually going to tell us why it was so important to get into this box. The reason was, obviously, they didn't have a clue what was in the box, or why, even if it was important, they assumed it was. That wasn't the thing. No. Commander Spax, basically, he called us up to a meeting, me, Billy, and Tom, and he finally divulged some information he'd been given. The box belonged to Spiz Muckendry. For those who, don't know or have simply forgotten, Spiz Muckendry was an arc thief and also a stealer of rare precious objects, as well as other things. Though the reason he stole it was not for, say, their value and that. He stole them because he wanted to become famous off it. And the reason he wanted to become famous was to become remembered. Like me, he didn't want to be forgotten when he died. And if you also might remember, this was my first sort of proper mission. Unfortunately, it didn't really go exactly how I, thought it would go. I thought he would be, apprehended, arrested and that. Unfortunately, no, he was shot by Commander Spatz. Which, obviously he started to kick everything off and that, and resulted in me, Billy and Tom going to USP's Mutual Benefactor, which is a really, really weird, just weird, I don't know, would you call it weirdism of some sort? What, I won't say any more, just listen to the episode. Just listen to the episode. I mean, come on, you should be following along with this. I shouldn't have to spout continuity and that every 2 minutes and that. You should know this by now. But in case you don't, there you are, nice little backstory. Good to get the senses off going, because apparently, unless people binge watch things, they can't retain the knowledge of what happened in the previous episode for more than a few seconds, or at least less than a day. Unless they're constantly tweeting about it. But anyway, it was revealed that the box was his and that, and it was the only thing that was separately locked up. All the other artifacts and that were underneath his, hideout, bunker, base, etc. All the others, just there and that. As soon as they broke into that place and that, they were all there. This was the only thing that was separately locked up in its own little box. And obviously they had no idea what was in there. Obviously they done scans and that to reveal that it was non-explosive and non-lethal, but again, they had no idea. They'd already gone through everything else and that he had stolen, and everything else seemed to match up. So either this was something that had been stolen and had been gone unreported, or it was something else entirely. Or there was also the possibility that it was completely empty and might have been being saved for something else, something particularly valuable. Dunno. But that was beside the point anyhow. The reason they were so desperate to get open and sort of get this over with was apparently Muckendry had some followers and that of his and that who had sort of kept up his legacy. Yes, name dropping the title. The thing is, you call something for a reason, don't you? But yes, some of his ex-employees and sometimes just basic outright fans and admirers had basically just continued, stealing artwork and their precious jewellery or rare items. And apparently they'd been putting it in some unknown location. At least it was unknown until now. You see, they managed to intercept a transmission saying that they were going to be stealing some rare Fabergé egg that was made of gold, and some other rare diamonds were encrusted on it. And this is where they needed my talents to, basically pose as the person on the transmission, and when they get there to breaking and that, just give them some false directions and something like that. Obviously, the person who made the transmission could very well be there, so if that person with that voice did turn up, then they would have to be taken out pretty quickly, or at least be separated from the rest of the group. I was basically just, misdirection, for example, because this job would require them to have really good communication. For example, for all of the lasers and extra security precautions, one of them would have to basically be hacking, and the other one would also have to be guiding while the other one actually went in and did the job. So it would take at least 3 people to do it. Would there be more? It was unsure. The transmission only gave details about time and place, and unfortunately they were unable to trace where the transmission was actually going to. So finding them out before they actually carried out the job was a bit impossible at this time and place. But hey, at least they managed to get something right. So basically the job that was going to take place later on that evening, at around 10:30ish, the egg was being kept in a museum. The museum closed at around 6, and they must have gotten some inside info because they knew exactly the route that the guards would take. Obviously 2 ways of doing that. Either one of them had actually, just snuck out and skaked out, or they'd either hidden a camera there, or actually there's a third reason, isn't there? They could have simply just found some ground plans. But anyway, they knew basically when the guards were patrolling around, there was 2 night guards for this museum. It was a rather large-ish museum. I would say about half the size of your, regular IKEA store. Except nowhere near as cluttered and nowhere near as a literal maze to get around. This museum was on a dwarf planet called Horiditon? I must be. I apologise if I'm mispronouncing that, but it looks to be Horiditon. But yes, basically a dwarf planet. Not really that big, and to be honest, the only 2 things that were really on this planet were this, fairly sizable museum. Not huge, but fairly sizable, and also a coffee shop, because of course you can't have a museum and that or anything these days without slapping a coffee shop or a McDonald's or some other fast food establishment or coffee shop or something along those lines. After all, if there isn't a fast food establishment or coffee shop there, it's not worth existing. It reminds me when I was having a chat with Alan Carr, and he said when he was looking at TripAdvisor, someone had apparently given Stonehenge a 1 star because it didn't have a coffee shop. Yes, really, he showed me on his phone, and I just couldn't bloody believe it. But then again, I thought to myself, and actually, you know what, I actually can believe it, and people are that fucking stupid. There never seems to be an end to idiocy, does there? It just seems to keep going and going. Heck, I think the one thing to true immortality is just stupidity at this rate. I mean, how come the stupid seem to be continuing to breed so much? It's not survival of the fittest, it's survival of who can breed the quickest. But anyway, the plan was set, and that's basically, I was to go there with an ID mask that would basically just black out my face, basically, because obviously they would all be wearing, disguises and that. I mean, the only problem was if this person, was particularly short or particularly tall, although, we were hoping that maybe, just maybe, we might actually get something on this. But basically, I had to either impersonate the guy who made the call, because, that was the only vocal cords that were available that we knew that was involved on this job, or I'd have to listen to someone else who was there and take them out and then take their place, who was roughly around the same size that I was. Billy and Tom would be coordinating me and basically be tracking them, so to make sure that I didn't get myself in some trouble. Commander Spax would be monitoring the whole situation from a shuttle around about a mile away from where this dwarf planet was. Everything was set. I geared up in black camouflage at USP, but I wasn't going to be putting the ID mask on until absolutely necessary. I mean, those things, are a bit uncomfortable. I mean, unless you have a one, specially made to fit your face, they can sort of dig in a bit or feel a bit uncomfortable. Apparently, they either feel incredibly loose on you to the point where you're worried that they're going to fall off, or in my case, where they feel like they're going to be digging in and gouging out your eyes. Billy took one look at me and said, "So, you're ready to be a cat burglar, I see?" I gave him a look of unamusement and said, "Look, Billy, I'm really glad your humour's back, and I'm glad that you're now sort of balancing yourself out and that, but really, you couldn't make a more original joke, could you? He shrugged at me and said, "Hey, they're classic for a reason." As I passed Billy, I saw Tom sitting in the corner just smirking to himself over the conversation that had just happened. I approached him with, "So have you got any words of encouragement for me, Tom?" He looked up at me and said, "They should have given you black leather, then you'd be a real Catwoman." I stretched out my lips and nodded my head to the side. And I was thinking of saying, I thought Billy's jokes were crap, but you take them to a next level. However, I thought to myself, if I start making remarks like that, they'll keep making more shitty jokes. So I just decided to sort of awkwardly laugh to it, which I hoped would maybe get them to shut up about it, though I doubt it would. But anyway, now we were all kitted up and ready to set off. Of course, we were given the usual spiel by Commander Spax of basically summarising it for everyone. Don't fuck this one up. Got ya. 100%. Right, yes, obviously. After a few more Catwoman jokes at me, thanks to Billy and Tom and also some of USP's crew members, thanks to Billy and Tom's encouragement, yeah, thanks for that. No, really helps me stay mellow and that, yes. So much for helping my anger, isn't it? Stay mellow understanding, but yeah, call it practice, won't we? Yeah, call it practicing. Start at a low level of controlling your anger. Let's see, how high we can irritate you in order to see, how much I can take. Yeah, that's surely to work, that's absolutely 100% foolproof. But anyway, we arrived at this museum in the dead of night. Well, I'm assuming it was the dead of night. To be honest, in space it's really hard to tell, to be honest. Because this planet was a fair distance from our sun, and apparently it was also, blocked by other things like, space stations, other planets, and that just blocking its view of the sun. So really, I think it'd be hard to tell whether it was daytime. Still, though, if they didn't have a clock, I'd assume that they would just stay open for that smidget of sunlight that they probably did get. Now, thankfully, rather than travelling in a shuttle and trying not to get spotted on the remainder of the journey, thankfully, USP had access to this museum's teleport coordinates. So it meant I had direct access to the museum. Unfortunately, that would also mean I would also have to get out of the museum as well, so that I could get onto the roof. However, again, thankfully USB had thought of this and gave me some access codes to the locks, as well as an ID card, just so if it happened that a guard was happened to be round the teleport links at the same time, although apparently due to their calculations, that was seeming to be unlikely at this time. The guards and the museum themselves couldn't be informed of this, otherwise it could interfere with what was about to happen. After all, if USP could intercept this transmission, then surely the place that or organisation that was about to break in could probably have the equipment to intercept one of ours if they were monitoring the museum this thoroughly. Again, Commander Spax gave me one final little brief and then wished me good luck. Well, at least the good luck part of what he said seemed to be genuine, so I did appreciate that. At this point, finally, Bill and Tom stopped joking and actually genuinely wished me good luck, and that they would have my back no matter what. It now seemed like for the first time since we started our band, that we were all truly on the same page again. That we'd finally worked out all the kinks and twists that had happened to us. And yes, I know most of them were mainly my fault, but it seemed that, we'd grown better because of it. We now understood each other better. We were all much closer and better for it. I mean, mainly because we kind of had to be. I mean, we weren't forced really into the situation, but it was very heavily suggested that. And obviously, we were the only three people who knew each other at USP. We hadn't really had time to really get to know anyone else. I mean, well, we sort of knew very small trinkets about Commander Spax, but really next to nothing. He was just our commanding officer. So really, there was only the three of us to talk to. I did try, talking to other people and that, though they just didn't really seem interested. Most of the people at USB just seem really bored and uninterested people. They just don't seem to be bothered about anything, just do the job and that's it. I can kind of see why and how the mentality of how USB was operating before me, Billy, and Tom interfered with that became a reality. But anyway, the teleport was activated and I was in. Luckily, the emergency exit was right next to the teleport. I imagine the teleport was an emergency exit in itself. Using the keycard, I was able to get out without alerting anyone. I double-checked that my face was fully covered before using some anti-gravity boots I'd been given, so that I could float up to the roof. I was kind of a little bit disappointed. I wanted one of those, maybe a suction boots or something, so I could literally just walk up the wall and then reenact Wallace from Wallace and Gromit from The Wrong Trousers. That would just be the best. It kind of felt like that in a way. That's how I was imagining it in my head. Though at least I, unlike Wallace, would be fully conscious and, at the time, also actively trying to prevent a crime, rather than being briskly unaware that I was helping to cause it. So, I arrived on the roof, and through my earpiece, I was given directions by Tom in order to which window skylight that I was able to get over to, which was apparently the meeting point. I was also played the recording of this group's informant again that we'd managed to intercept. This was also the difficult bit as well. Why? Well, for example, remember when I mentioned I'd have to be able to, hear the vocals in order to copy them? At this point, I was going to have to learn a new technique, which was I would have to imagine in my head hearing all the different, sayings and words that this person would say. Because obviously we only had a small amount of audio, so I had to do two things. One, do as little talking as possible, and two, when I did talk, I had to make absolutely certain I could visualise the speech in my head and also hear it in my mind. I had practiced this a couple of times with varying success. Obviously, there wasn't much of a choice this time. I would have to get it right bang on first time. Otherwise this mission, and very well could be my life, could be over. I waited for a few minutes, then 3 other large men or creatures, I couldn't tell, they were all dressed in black like I was, covering their faces, arrived. At first they didn't say anything to me and started to cut through the glass. I'm guessing they wanted to do as little talking as possible themselves. The plan was here for me to also get some footage for evidence. A tiny body cam was fitted to me, and as well as being recorded there and then, was also sending the footage back live to USP. Well, I say USP, the shuttle that they sent out for us. Thanks to me, this was giving them absolute proof and evidence to put these 3 away. It finally came time for one of them to descend, using a rope line. In my bag that they'd given me was a teleport relay link. Quickly, while they were busy, I got it out and activated it as I was instructed to. Then, all the officers that were on that USP shuttle that I was on arrived and arrested the 3 of them. The odd thing was that they didn't really seem to be resisting arrest. They just sort of just stood there, just allowed it to happen. They didn't fight back, they didn't even shout any verbal abuse, they just let it happen. I couldn't help but think this seemed to be too easy. When we teleported the 3 of them back to the shuttle, the 3 of them were searched. 2 of them were carrying nothing of value or significance, other than some break-in equipment. However, to my astonishment, the 3rd one carried a piece of paper with some musical notes on it in various tones. Commander Spax questioned him about it, and oddly as luck seemed to have it, he revealed that Muckendry had gave him these instructions in some relation to a box. Obviously it took more than a few seconds for it to fully process some of us, because quite frankly we'd forgotten about that thing, being a relation to Spiz Muckendry. But as soon as we realised, we were full speed back to the USP's base. Me, Tom, Billy and Commander Spats split off from the rest of the USP officers that were on that shuttle to go find the box. Obviously it was in our room, so as long as I hadn't dumped my clothes on it this morning, then it should be easy to find. And sure enough, it was. There it was, ready. Commander Spax handed me the piece of paper. It turns out me and Billy and Tom were actually pretty close, and I was able to remember the notes in my head. Then, as I replicated them, the box opened. Inside was a small, handheld-looking device with 2 rods sticking out of it that looked like a tuning fork, with 2 sharp needles at the end, ending in a point. Commander Spax picked up the device. As he did, his attitude seemed to change. Before he seemed rushed and panicky, but now seemed more calm and relaxed. He also locked eyes with me, as his face formed an elongated smile. He then said to me, "Thank you, Donfrey. You have been so much help to us." I was sort of freaked out a bit by this, so I replied with a slightly nervous, "No problem?" Commander Spax continued, No, I don't think you understand, Donfrey. You have been a massive help to Spiz Muckendry." Tom was the first one to become suspicious, and demanded to know what he was on about. Again, Spax continued, "You see, Muckendry is not dead, merely in suspended animation. But this will revive him, and when he does revive, he hopes that the 3 of you will stand by him, as he thoroughly destroys USP and everything they stood for. Because if not, then I'm afraid I'm going to have to destroy you too for him."